Welcome to the Ultimate Life television program, brought to you by Pastor Gracious Selassie Awiye of Treasure House ICGC, where you are treasured and not trashed.
Welcome to the Ultimate Life broadcast. I'm your host, Gracious Selassie Awiye, Pastor of Treasure House ICGC. Jesus said, I'm come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. It's life about the ordinary. It's called the ultimate life. On this program, we are presented with a blueprint for the ultimate life. So expect to be changed, expect to grow, expect the ultimate life. We are continuing with our series on winning the war of your mind. There is a war against your mind, an attack on your health, your finance, on your mind. The enemy is waging war against your values, trying to persuade you and direct you towards his cause. And I want to start telling you a story some of you might have heard about a little bird that flew south for the winter. The winter was approaching. The bird took to flight. But before the bird could get to south where it was warmer, the cold began to set in, and the bird's wings began to freeze up. So the bird landed in a field and sat on the ground on the snow and began to freeze up. As it sat there freezing up, a cow happened to walk by, stopped near the bird, dropped a big blob of manure on top of the bed and buried the bird in the manure. While the bird sat there feeling frozen, dropped on, he noticed that the cow manure was warm, and as it began to warm up, it noticed that it was thawing out, so it began to move its wings. It began to stick its head out of the manure, and it began to tweet and sing. Soon it drew the attention of the cat who came along and dug him out of the manure and ate him. The moral of the story is threefold. Firstly, not everyone who drops manure on you is your enemy. Secondly, not everyone who digs you out of a pile of manure is your friend. Thirdly, it's most important, when you are deep in manure, keep your mouth shut. How many of you know the enemy wants to drop manure on you today? He wants to bury you alive as you go to better things in your life. He wants to bury you in manure. But God wants you to sing. He does want you to sing. However, he doesn't want you to smell like manure. Too many Christians, when you meet them, you can smell what they've been through. I reckon when we meet people, we ought to go, what have you been through that? I didn't know that. We shouldn't have the smell of things on our lives. We should have the fragrance of Christ. In fact, there are senses inside your brain that receive the signals. So our thinking and our brain has a lot to do with the smell and the fragrance of our lives. They say that when you burn things in a home, the smell lingers a long time in that house. A lot of people's lives have been burnt, and you can smell it as you encounter them. But God wants us to be free from it. I believe we need a blast of the Holy Ghost blowing out from all the crevices, because the smell gets stuck in the crevices of our hearts, so that we smell like the fragrance of Christ. So, our subtitle for today's lesson is you don't have to smell like fire. You need to understand that the enemy wants to put you through fiery trials. He wants to put you through tough things. He's come against your mind, but you need to come out not smelling like fire. And you can come out victorious. We are going to be reading from the book of Daniel in a moment, but I want to give you a little bit of background. The book of Daniel is interesting in that we read about the Babylonian captivity of the children of Israel. 4 men in particular, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They were brought as the talented young men of Israel. They had aptitude for every kind of learning, well informed, quick to understand, and skilled. King Nebuchadnezzar now tries to transform them so that they will smell like Babylon. The reason they are in Babylon is because they served idols, and the Lord sent them into captivity. He allowed the Babylonians to take them into captivity. So here they are in this place, and their education is being shaped, as well as a new language being taught to them. They also changed their culture and gave them different names. They've been shaped by their political system. They refuse to bow down and under this political system, in that they wouldn't eat the food that they were served by the king. There were other areas where they struggled. Let's step back and read from Daniel chapter 2, from verse 1 to 45. Daniel chapter 2, verse 1 to 45. In the second year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His mind was troubled, and he could not sleep. So the king summoned the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers to tell him what he had dreamed. When they came in and stood before the king, he said to them, "I have had a dream that troubles me, and I want to know what it means." Then the astrologers answered the king, "May the king live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will interpret it." The king replied to the astrologers, "This is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me what my dream was and interpret it, I will have you cut into pieces and your houses turned into piles of rubble. But if you tell me the dream and explain it, you receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. So tell me the dream and interpret it for me." Once more they replied, "Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will interpret it." Then the king answered, "I am certain that you are trying to gain time, because you realize that this is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me the dream, there is only one penalty for you. You have conspired to tell me misleading and wicked things, hoping the situation will change. So then, tell me the dream, and I will know that you can interpret it for me." The astrologers answered the king, "There's no one on earth who can do what the king asks. No king, however great and mighty, has ever asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or astrologer. What the king asks is too difficult. No one can reveal it to the king except the gods, and they do not live among humans." This made the king so angry and furious that he ordered the execution of all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree was issued to put the wise men to death. And men were sent to look for Daniel and his friends to put them to death. When Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, had gone out to put to death the wise men of Babylon, Daniel spoke to him with wisdom and tact. He asked the king's officer, "Why did the king issue such a harsh decree?" Arioch then explained the matter to Daniel. At this, Daniel went in to the king and asked for time so that he might interpret the dream for him. Then Daniel returned to his house and explained the matter to his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He urged them to plead for mercy from the from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that he and his friends might not be executed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. During the night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. Then Daniel praised the God of heaven and said, "Praise be to the name of God forever and ever. Wisdom and power are his. He changes times and seasons. He disposes kings and raises up others. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the discerning. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank and praise you, God. I thank and praise you, God of my ancestors. You have given me wisdom and power. You have made known to me what we asked of you. You have made known to us the dream of the king." Then Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to execute the wise men of Babylon, and said to him, "Do not execute the wise men of Babylon. Take me to the king, and I will interpret his dream for him." Arioch took Daniel to the king at once and said, "I found a man among the exiles from Judah who can tell the king what his dream means." The king asked Daniel, also called Belshazzar, "Are you able to tell me what I saw in my dream and interpret it?" Daniel replied, "No wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to the king the mystery he has asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come. Your dream and the visions that passed through your mind as you were lying in bed are these. As your majesty was lying there, your mind turned to things to come, and the revealer of mysteries showed you what is going to happen. As for me, this mystery has been revealed to me, not because I have great wisdom than anyone else. Not because I have greater wisdom than anyone else alive, but so that your majesty may know the interpretation, and that you may understand what went through your mind." Your majesty looked, and there before you stood a large statue, an enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance. The head of the statue was made of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of baked clay. While you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were all broken to pieces and became like chaff on a threshing floor in the summer. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace. But the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream, and now we will interpret it to the king. Your majesty, you are the King of kings, the God of heaven, has given you dominion and power and might and glory. In your hands he has placed all mankind and the beasts of the field and the birds in the sky. Wherever they live, he has made you ruler over them all. You are that head of gold. After you, another kingdom will arise, inferior to yours. Next, a third kingdom, one of bronze, will rule over the whole earth. Finally, there will be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron. For one breaks and smashes everything. For iron breaks and smashes everything. And as iron breaks things to pieces, so it will crush and break all the others. Just as you saw that the feet and toes were partly of baked clay and partly of iron. So this will be a divided kingdom, yet it will have some of the strength of iron in it. Even as you saw iron mixed with clay, as the toes were partly iron and partly clay, so this kingdom will be partly strong and partly brittle. And just as you saw the iron mixed with baked clay, so the people will be a mixture and will not remain united any more than iron mixes with clay. In the time of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor be left to another people. It will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it will itself endure forever. This is the meaning of the vision of the rock cut out of a mountain, but not by human hands, a rock that broke the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold to pieces. The great God has shown the king what to take place in the future. The dream is true and its interpretation is trustworthy. So it's talking about Jesus eventually overtaking all the kingdoms of the world. After all this, Nebuchadnezzar decides to build this massive statue 27 meters high, and he wants everyone to bow down and worship it. So we pick the story today and we see the responses of God's people, and it's a lesson for us. Please, this is not a myth we are reading, it's a true story. In Hebrews chapter 11, we'll read later, it's recorded as a true event, not a myth. And so I want you to glean from this, because it speaks to our situation right here today in our country and in the world in which we live. So come with me to chapter 3, verse 1 to 3. King Nebuchadnezzar made an iron of gold 60 cubits high, 60 cubits high, and 6 cubits wide, and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. He then summoned the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials to come to the dedication of the image he had set up. So the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all other provincial officials assembled for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before it. So, politics here determining how people should believe and what they should believe, controlling the religious values of people. That's exactly what the world is doing. From the top, laws are being legislated as to what we should believe and what we should do. And everyone in politics becomes politically correct when they do the right thing that governments have set up. Exactly what happened at this time. Verse 4. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, nations and peoples of every language, this is what you are commanded to do. Trying to bring everybody together in one way of thinking. Verse 5. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Notice how it mentions all those instruments, because it's using different music so that every person has a piece of this worship. The word worship is mentioned 9 times in this passage. Look at verse 6. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. In other words, you will have a fiery trial. There will be opposition. So everyone bows down and they worship. To worship means to give your affection, your loyalty to this thing. It's a serious matter. Your heart cannot just be given to something that some person set up. It's got to be given to the person God set up. The rock that will smash all the kingdoms and become a mountain in the earth. Verse 11 and 12. And whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into a blazing furnace. But there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, your majesty. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up. There are always troublemakers who try and stir up trouble. They never live their own life. They always have to draw people into conflict. Verses 13 and 14. Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? Is it true? Here is an opportunity for them to back down. He was giving them the option to say it's not true. Verse 15 and 16. Now when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you'll be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. Notice how they had a ready, polite answer. Verses 17 and 18. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. They had a complete theology. Verse 19. Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude toward them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times, hotter than usual. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times, hotter than usual. When you go to work and you do not agree with people, don't be surprised that they get upset, they get uptight. When you differ with people on religious beliefs, they get freaked out, upset, and they attack you. But God help you if you say anything. They call you names. You are a bigot. You are intolerant. The list goes on. It's part of the course that we live. It's what we have to face. But we need to stick to our guns with politeness. Look at verse 20 to 25. And commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent and the furnace so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace. The king Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisers, "Weren't there three men that we tied up and threw into the fire?" They replied, "Certainly, Your Majesty." He said, "Look, I see four men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the fourth looks like a son of the gods." That's what God does.
Thank you for watching the Ultimate Life television program. We hope you have been blessed by the teaching. Tune in to our next program on the same channel and the same time next week. You are